Welcome back to That Conversation, the 2026 edition. It's a new season and new thoughts and new conversations. And like we discussed last week, this week will be a touchy subject, to say the least. I know that it might be hard for some, and we're going to try our best not to offend or trigger anyone. But we're going to touch on alcohol today and what's been going on in our community and how it has affected our community. I think it's best that we kind of look at the realities and the facts of the matter concerning Nova Scotia and at large, Nova Scotia at large, and Cumberland County and the other rural areas of Nova Scotia. I think it's definitely not a secret that it hits each community differently. I think it's quite obvious that there is a struggle with alcoholism within Nova Scotia for many different reasons, of which we'll get into with our esteemed guests, Todd Augustus Scott, as well as Gillian Enright, two therapists, notable therapists, and they've been in this field for a long period of time. But before they come on, I just wanted to touch on some of the stats as a preference and a context to what we'll be discussing today.
Thanks, Dave. We pulled together a few statistics that help paint a picture of what's happening in our communities when it comes to alcohol, and some of these numbers are pretty eye-opening. In Nova Scotia, the average person starts drinking at just 13 years old. That's well before most health recommendations say it's safe. Nearly 1 in 5 people aged 12 and older report drinking at levels considered high risk, more than 7 drinks a week. Studies also show that over a quarter of men and about 1 in 6 women report heavy drinking patterns, and this shows up in our health system. In a recent year, alcohol was responsible for around 280 hospitalizations per 100,000 residents in this province. The financial impact is massive too. Alcohol-related harms cost Nova Scotia hundreds of millions of dollars every year between healthcare and broader social costs. And here's an important piece of context. Alcohol is classified by the World Health Organization as a cancer-causing substance, and no amount is considered completely safe. So these numbers aren't just statistics, they're part of everyday life here.
I think the last point is the most important one. We're really dealing with health, not just the health of the individual, but health of our community, right? And I think a lot of people forget that alcohol is not recommended health-wise. It's not a healthy thing for you to consume, and that all alcohol is carcinogenic. I think that's just a fact. I know that it could possibly be complementary. Sometimes, like what we discussed before, it could be a means of taking the edge off or a nice hot summer day, a beer, right? These natural things. But I think if we could just remember that alcohol, no matter how it makes us feel, is not actually healthy. Now, of course, we're going to talk about wine and other things like that, but we're speaking about the ills of alcohol today. So that's something that stuck out to me, is that it is actually not healthy, right? And we can get into now relationships and the abuse of alcohol and what that means for our mental health. But that's something that many people fail to either realize or remember, that is actually a fact. And so in Nova Scotia, we do have high rates of cancer, right? Unfortunately. And that's something that we just have to deal with. Again, Nova Scotians start drinking at the average age of 13 years and 4 months. And for those of us who know what we know, we know that is not true. They actually start drinking a lot earlier than that. Now, when you consider what the national drinking age is, we could see how that could be a problem. And again, access to alcohol might be one of the issues that we're speaking about as well, because again, we're talking about alcoholism and the abuse of alcohol and the cycle of it too, right? And how this is prevalent within our communities at large, and how this seems to be a never-ending trend in our family circles as well, which leads to many different things, unfortunately, that are not the healthiest ways about going about life. About 18% over the age of 12 report high alcohol use, which is basically alcohol abuse. That again is a very high number of our youth, who will eventually, hopefully, become adults, right, and what they're dealing with. So that might speak to what they're going through and how we handle our problems. A lot of times, even as adults, we find in what we do, a lot of people turn to alcohol in order to self-medicate, to handle life's ills, worries, and concerns and stresses. And unfortunately, that does not work. What happens is we drink to excess, we drink extra, we drink more, and then our problems are still there. And sometimes it worsens, actually. We're not actually solving the problem, we're delaying it. And oftentimes we're not even delaying it. That's not even true. We're not even delaying it at all. So we as a society are actually kicking the can down the road. And sometimes that's making things even worse. So here we are at the age of 12 plus, and we're already starting that trend. So when we get up into adulthood, we have perfected it, really. It's become part of who we are and how we handle problems. And unfortunately, we teach that to our children as well. Now, oftentimes we usually associate drinking with men because obviously men predominantly drink more. We drink and we do things very wrong oftentimes, but yet still, it's kind of shocking that it's only 3% more than women, actually. 16% of women have a drinking problem who can't control the alcohol consumption. And again, especially in coupledoms, this leads to some serious domestic abuse situations, especially when both are involved. So oftentimes we have criticized men, we've stigmatized men in our various media platforms, movies, TV shows, music, whatever it is, the men's alcohol problem, the drunk man coming home, that type of thing. But oftentimes we don't see that women also drink a lot. And while they might not perpetrate violence as much as men, they do have the habit of still causing self-harm and harm to others. Women are equal to men. That stat actually caught me off guard there with the hospitalizations. I never really thought about that and how so many of our hospitalizations occur because of alcohol situations. I've actually asked a lot of men, if you did not consume alcohol that night, would you have got yourself into this situation? Would you have picked or chosen this person as a partner? Would they have chosen you? Would that fight have occurred? Would you have done what you've done? Would you have partaken in that substance? I'll leave it at that. And the answer oftentimes is no. Because we drink too much and we consume so much, we oftentimes make very poor decisions. And there's a reason why we should not drink and drive. And I think that's been preached from the hilltop as long as we could possibly remember. And yet still, because of alcohol addiction, we still see that is still occurring, even though everyone, including the person that is drinking and driving, are fully aware that is something not only illegal, but very dangerous, not only for yourself, but for the other people that are on the road. It just shows how it inebriates, benumbs our mental faculties. Binge drinking as a way of drinking is higher in Nova Scotia than many different provinces. And I think that for those of us who are listening right now could probably imagine that to be true. And I would love to discuss that with Jillian and Todd in their profession and how they've seen that come through their practice and what the reasons were that they found that many people have discussed with them as to why so much alcohol is consumed in their daily life and what the purpose and reasoning is. I'm sure that there is a reason, but it would be very, very interesting to see if it worked, if it's profitable, and if it's something that they would endorse. Hundreds of alcohol-related deaths, and I think that's the saddest part. I think we've all heard and seen, or we know someone who unfortunately lost someone because alcohol was a part of their demise in some way, shape, or form. And of course, we see this in intimate partner violence. A lot of times, alcohol is a key component in the reason why, and yes, it is predominantly men, especially when it comes to deaths because of intimate partner violence. A lot of men who struggle with many different things turn to alcohol as the first resort of their problems and how to deal with them. And of course, the problems don't go away. In fact, sometimes the problems are right in front of their face, and with that alcohol in them, that liquid courage becomes something worse, much, much worse. And so while it can be used in party atmospheres and for many people is to loosen them up, unfortunately, it seems to be a reliable source, something that covers their shame, and people turn to it and do the worst things, and they get in trouble with all types of illicit drugs and things of that nature. So I wanted to set the table for the conversation because these are the negatives. I would love to hear more of the positives, I guess, because I'm not sure if there are a ton, but I'm sure that somebody would bring that forth as a possible argument or a plausible argument. But in terms of our community and what we're seeing in our community, I wanted to kind of start from the foundation. And I do think that alcohol has a lot to play in what we're seeing today. And unfortunately, it's part of our society, and I'm not sure if it's going anywhere, but I really do hope that we can have a conversation about it and be honest with it. I'm sure Jillian and Todd, with a lot of the women and people that they are in contact with, is a sobering conversation. It really is. And I do feel like people know and that they should be, and they feel as though they should be more responsible with their alcohol consumption. If not, many men and many women and many people in general are really starting to cut back, if not quit, because it has brought them down the wrong path. It's all about decisions, and it's really difficult to make very rational decisions when you're under the influence of anything. So hopefully with this conversation, we have some clarity, some honesty, no judgment, and we can start the conversation that you can finish.
In case you hadn't realized, it has somehow become uncool to sound like you know what you're talking about.